see what has never been seen. Draw, paint, sing, sculpt, dance, and act what has never before been done. To push the envelope of creativity and language. And what's really important is, I call it the felt presence of direct experience, which is a fancy term which just simply means we have to stop consuming our culture. We have to stop consuming our culture. We have to create culture. Don't watch TV. Don't read magazines. Don't even listen to NPR. Create your own roadshow. The nexus of space and time, where you are now, is the most immediate sector of your universe. And if you're worrying about Michael Jackson or Bill Clinton or somebody else, then you are disempowered. You're giving it all away to icons which are maintained by an electronic media, so that you want to dress like X or have lips like Y. This is shit-brained, this kind of thinking. That is all cultural diversion. And what is real is you and your friends and your association, your highs, your orgasms, your hopes, your plans, your fears. And we're told, no, we're unimportant. We're peripheral. Get a degree, get a job, get a this, get a that, and then you're a player. You don't even want to play in that game. You want to reclaim your mind and get it out of the hands of the cultural engineers who want to turn you into a half-baked moron, consuming all this trash that's being manufactured out of the bones of a dying world. Where is that at? Where is that at? Where is that at? Catalyst to say what has never been said, to see what has never been seen. Draw, paint, sing, sculpt, dance, and act what has never before been done. To say what has never been said, to see what has never been seen. Draw, paint, sing, sculpt, dance, and act what has never before been done. What has never been said, to see what has never been seen. Draw, paint, sing, sculpt, dance, and act what has never before been done. To say what has never been said, to see what has never been seen. Draw, paint, sing, sculpt, dance, and act what has never before been done. Reclaim your mind.
Do you know who Akira The Don is?
Of course, he's amazing.
I only desire the approval of a relatively small number of people who I respect. If they said to me, I think you're totally wrong on this, Douglas, then I'd listen. But when it's people who don't want me to do well, then of course I don't listen to them. It's one of the tools we all have to hone in our lives, to work out who wants us to do well, who wishes us well, and to listen to them, even if they're critical of us, and they will be at times, and to separate out those people from people who just, of course they don't want you to do well. No, hate you, hate everything about you, whatever. But I don't have much sympathy with public figures who say, I can't say what I think, I can't speak up, and all this sort of thing. If you're not going to now, when are you going to? If you're not going to in this life, what life are you expecting to come where you'll do it. The person who doesn't stand with the mob, the person who doesn't go along with the mob, the person who refuses to walk with the crowd will feel better. The person who doesn't stand with the mob, the person who doesn't go along with the mob will achieve more in their lives, whatever that is, because they will have self-respect. I'm comfortable as you can be in the end times, as everything's burning down and there's plagues of locusts coming our way. And I have the satisfaction of knowing that I'm not lying. But the problem with going along is that it demoralizes you. It makes you a smaller person inside. You will be demoralized because you'll know that you shouldn't have done that. And at some level you will think badly of yourself for having done it. You'll feel regretful, you'll feel cowardly, and it will affect your life in other ways. And the opposite is also true. The person who doesn't stand with the mob, the person who doesn't go along with the mob, the person who refuses to walk with the crowd will feel better. The person who doesn't stand with the mob, the person who doesn't go along with the mob will achieve more in their lives, whatever that is, because they will have self-respect. That's what totalitarian movements across history always knew, was that you grind people down and make them agree to lies because you will then be able to make them do anything. Václav Havel, great late Czech leader, cites the example of a greengrocer in Prague in the communist era in Eastern Europe, who has to put up in his window, like everyone else, the notice that says, "Workers of the world unite." And it's sent by party headquarters to all greengrocers, and you all have to hang it. Václav Havel says a number of things happen from this. The first thing is that, of course, that the greengrocer is showing to everyone that he is a party loyalist and he wouldn't be able to operate as a business if he didn't do this thing. But it also hangs there every day as a sign of his subjugation. It's a little thing, but it hangs there as a sign of his subjugation. And it reminds him he's not the man he could be. You think you're doing a little thing, but you're not. You are diminishing your soul by doing this. Because you know that you could be something more than the person who just has to hang whatever party headquarters tells you to hang this week. The person who doesn't stand with the mob, the person who doesn't go along with the mob, the person who refuses to walk with the crowd will feel better. The person who doesn't stand with the mob, the person who doesn't go along with the mob will achieve more in their lives, whatever that is, because they will have self-respect.
Continue to act thus, my dear Lucilius. Set yourself free for your own sake.
Gather and save your time, which till lately has been forced from you, or filched away or merely slipped from your hands. Make yourself believe the truth of my words. There's certain moments are torn from us, some are gently removed, and others glide beyond our reach. And the others glide beyond our reach. The most disgraceful kind of loss is due to carelessness. Furthermore, if you will pay close heed to the problem, you will find the largest portion of our life passes while we are doing ill. A goodly share while we are doing nothing. And the whole while we are doing that which is not to the purpose. The whole while we are doing that which is not to the purpose. The whole while we are doing that which is not to the purpose. The whole while we are doing that which is not to the purpose. What man can you show me who places any value on his same, who reckons the worth of each day, who understands that he is dying daily. For we're mistaken when we look forward to death, the major portion passed already. The years behind us are in death's hands, therefore do as you write me that you're doing. Hold every hour in your grasp, lay hold of today's task, and you will not need to depend so much upon tomorrow's. While we are postponing, life speeds by. Nothing Lucilius is ours except time. We were entrusted by nature with ownership of a single thing so fleeting and slippery. Anyone who will can oust us from possession. And the whole while we are doing that which is not to the purpose. The whole while we are doing that which is not to the purpose. The whole while we are doing that which is not to the purpose. The whole while we are doing that which is not to the purpose. What fools these mortals be? They allow the cheapest and most useless things, which can easily be replaced, to be charged in the reckoning. And after they've acquired them, never regard themselves in debt when they've received some of that precious commodity, time. And yet time is the one loan which even a grateful recipient cannot repay. You may desire to know how I who preach to you so freely and practicing. I confess frankly my expense account balances as you would expect from one who is free-handed. But careful, I cannot boast that I waste nothing, but I can at least tell you what I am wasting and the cause and manner of the loss. I can give you the reasons why I'm a poor man. And the whole while we are doing that which is not to the purpose. The whole while we are doing that which is not to the purpose. The whole while we are doing that which is not to the purpose. The whole while we are doing that which is not to the purpose. My situation, however, is the same as that of many who are reduced to slender means through no fault of their own. Everyone forgives them, but no one comes to their rescue. What is the state of things then? It's this: I do not regard a man as poor if the little which remains is enough for him. I advise you, however, to keep what's really yours, and you cannot begin too early, for as our ancestors believed, it's too late to spare when you reach the dregs of the cask of that which remains at the bottom. The amount is slight and the quality is vile. Farewell. And the whole while we are doing that which is not to the purpose. The whole while we are doing that which is not to the purpose. The whole while we are doing that which is not to the purpose. The whole while we are doing that which is not to the purpose. The whole while we are doing that which is not to the purpose. The whole while we are doing that which is not to the purpose. The whole while we are doing that which is not to the purpose. The whole while we are doing that which is not to the purpose. If you like them or you love them, tell them savor, and it makes you stronger, braver, and it gives you heart and spirit to the end. If she earns your praise, bestow it. If you like him, let him know it. Let the words of true encouragement be said. Do not wait till life is over and they're underneath the clover, for they cannot read their tombstone when they're dead. If with pleasure you are viewing any work someone is doing, if you like them or you love them, tell them now. Don't withhold your approbation till the person makes oration, and they lie with snowy lilies on their brow. If you like them or you love them, tell them now. Don't withhold your approbation till the person makes oration, and they lie with snowy lilies on their brow.
So it's difficult for us, because of that cultural heritage, to accept, to accommodate our common sense to the idea that the web might basically be playful. That it might be like somebody saying, "Won't you come and play with me?" Child. And the other child has some little hesitation. "I don't know whether I ought to play with you. You come from the wrong side of the track. I don't feel like playing today. I feel serious. I don't think play is important. We ought to do something real, like wash the dishes for mother," who, incidentally, has forgotten that the whole point of washing the dishes is playful. Arranging patterns of life. Playful. Arranging the patterns of life. So nice. Playful. Arranging patterns of life. Playful. Arranging patterns of life. So nice. Playful. You don't wash the dishes for a serious reason. You like the table to look nice, you know. You don't want to serve up the dishes for dinner with all the leavings of breakfast still lying on them. So why do you want the table to look nice? Well, again, it's for nice. You like the pattern of it that way. People get terribly compulsive about doing these things. And they think that going on, arranging the patterns of life is something that's a duty. That means a debt, that you owe it to yourself or to your family or to someone or other. You're in debt. See, that's the trouble. When a child comes into the world, the parents play an awful game on it. Instead of being honest, they say, "We've made such great sacrifices for you. Here we are, we've supported you, we've paid for your education, and you're an ungrateful little bastard." And the child feels terribly guilty, because what we do is we build into every human being the idea that existence is guilt. Playful. Arranging patterns of life. Playful. Arranging patterns of life. So nice. Playful. Arranging patterns of life. Playful. Arranging patterns existentialists make a big thing of this. And you watch out for them, because they're hoaxers. And they say that guilt is ontological. If you're not feeling guilty, you're not human. That was because Papa and Mama said, look at all the trouble you've caused us. You shouldn't dare to exist. You have no rights, but maybe we'll give you some out of the generosity of our hearts so that you'll be permanently indebted to us. And so everybody goes around with that sort of thing in their background unless they had different kinds of papas and mamas who didn't play that trick. And if they don't do it, somebody else does it. Auntie comes around and says, you don't realize what your father and mother have done for you. You think you can just stay around here and goof off, but they've sweated blood to give you your clothes and food and so on, and you ought to be grateful for it. But that's not the way to make people grateful. They won't be grateful that way. They'll imitate gratefulness. They'll go and put on a big show and say, oh, thank you so much, I feel so indebted to you, and so on and so forth, and they'll make it look good. But it isn't real. But it isn't real. Because, actually, one's father and mother had a great deal of fun bringing you into being, or we hope they did. And they wanted to do that the worst way. They have no reason to complain about all these things and try and make the children feel guilty. Playful. Arranging patterns of life. Playful. But nice. Playful. Arranging patterns of life. Playful. Arranging patterns of life. But nice.
It's a wonderful phrase that the late Australian political philosopher Ken Minogue came up with. He identified a certain type of person who is keen on the revolutionary attitude, keen to be at the barricades. He called it St. George in retirement syndrome. That St. George, after slaying the dragon and getting all the acclaim of slaying the dragon, might be tempted to go around the land finding more dragons. There being a deficit of dragons in the land, might end up swinging his sword at smaller and smaller beasts until eventually he might be found swinging his sword at thin air. Well, I don't say that there's no dragon-like thing left to slay in our society. I don't say that everything's perfect, but there is a lot in that, in the febrile, furious atmosphere of our times. When things have never been better, they're portrayed as if they've never been worse. In the febrile, furious atmosphere of our times. When things have never been better, they're portrayed as if they've never been worse. And this idea, I understand why people wish they'd been with Martin Luther King at the March on Washington. I have a few friends who were there. Tell me about it, it's fantastic, just thrilling in the telling. I understand that people might want to be there. I understand that some people wish they'd been at the Stonewall Inn. I get that. But I would urge that instead of thinking, therefore, I will fight as hard now as they did then, even if the stakes are minimal or non-existent, I would say, why not just enjoy the fruits of your predecessors' legacy and bravery and do something better with your life now? St. George, after slaying the dragon and getting all the acclaim of slaying the dragon, might be tempted to go around the land finding more dragons. And there being a deficit of dragons in the land, might end up swinging his sword at smaller and smaller beasts. After slaying the dragon and getting all the acclaim of slaying the dragon, he might be tempted to go around the land finding more dragons to slay. And there being a deficit of dragons in the land, might end up swinging his sword at smaller and smaller beasts until eventually he might be found swinging his sword at thin air. Swinging his sword at thin air. Swinging his sword at thin air. The full-on, furious atmosphere of our time. When things have never been better, they're portrayed as if they've never been worse. The full-on, furious atmosphere of our time. When things have never been better, they're portrayed as if they've never been worse. Isn't the attitude of our time. The attitude of our time is an audition after the fact to be right in the center of the melee.
Therefore, take no thought for the moral, for the moral shall take thought for the things of itself. Sufficient unto the day is the evil thereof. I spent a long time trying to figure out what that meant too, because it's another one of those lines that can easily be read as pro-grasshopper, an anti-ant. Remember the old fable of the grasshopper and the ant? Maybe not. I'm not going to tell it, but the ant works and the grasshopper fiddles. The ant has a pretty good time in the winter and the grasshopper dies. And so this is like a pro-grasshopper line, but it's not. It says something else. It says that if you orient yourself properly and then pay attention to what you do every day, that works. That works. That works. That works. And you can live in the day. You're a creature that has an aim. You have to have an aim. That makes every moment supercharged with meaning. Live in the day. You're a creature that has an aim. You have to have an aim. That makes every moment supercharged with meaning. The world shifts itself around your aim. You're a creature that has an aim. You have to have an aim in order to do something. You're an aiming creature. You look at a point and you move towards it. It's built right into you. And so you have an aim. Well, let's say your aim is the highest possible aim. That sets up the world around you. It organizes all of your perception, what you see and you don't see, your emotions and your motivation. So you organize yourself around that aim, and then what happens? The day manifests itself as a set of challenges and problems, and if you solve them properly, you stay on the pathway towards that aim, and you can concentrate on the day. And so that way, you get to have your cake and eat it too. Because you can point into the distance, the far distance. Point into the distance, the far distance. And you can live in the day. You're a creature that has an aim. You have to have an aim. That makes every moment supercharged with meaning. Live in the day. You're a creature that has an aim. You have to have an aim. That makes every moment supercharged with meaning. If everything that you're doing is related to the highest possible aim that you can conceptualize, that's the very definition of the meaning that would sustain you in your life. Well, and then the issue is back to Noah. Well, all hell's about to break loose, and chaos is coming, it's like when that's happening in your life, you might want to be doing something that you regard as truly worthwhile. Because that's what will keep you afloat when everything is flooded. And you don't want to wait until the flood comes to start doing that. Because if your ark's half built and you don't know how to captain it, the probability is very high that you'll drown. And you can live in the day. You're a creature that has an aim. You have to have an aim. That makes every moment supercharged with meaning. Live in the day. You're a creature that has an aim. You have to have an aim. That makes every moment supercharged with meaning. You know, one of the things that revolutionary movements have to offer young people is a sense of romantic adventure. I mean, if you're working at 7-Eleven in a dead-end job and you're offered an adventure, the chance to demonstrate dramatically for a messianic cause, especially if you're young, that's going to call to something deep inside you and excite you, because everyone needs a higher purpose, and that longing can be addressed by romantically inclined ideologues, but there are better ways of addressing that longing, I believe, and there's tremendous adventure in doing something like telling the truth. There's tremendous adventure in doing something like telling the truth. There's tremendous adventure in doing something like telling the truth. There's tremendous adventure in doing something like telling the truth. There's tremendous adventure in doing something like telling the truth. There's a tremendous adventure in that. It's a demanding ethical striving, and it's a form of responsibility to pay attention to what you say and to only say things that you believe to be true. And there's insane adventure in that, because you have no idea what's going to happen if you do that. You entice people into adopting ethical responsibility by pointing out to them in story and perhaps to the degree you're capable by example that there isn't anything more interesting or meaningful that they could possibly do. There's tremendous adventure in doing something like telling the truth. There's tremendous adventure in doing something like telling the truth. There's tremendous adventure in doing something like telling the truth. There's tremendous adventure in doing something like telling the truth. And I think that's part of the reason that my books and lectures have proved popular. I'm making a case for some things, I suppose, that you might regard as obvious, at least when viewed from a certain perspective. When I was talking to large live audiences, I noted that one topic in particular would bring the audience to a dead silent halt constantly, and that was when I made a rhetorical case for the relationship between responsibility and meaning. And you need a meaning in life. You need a purpose to sustain you through the catastrophe of life, through the suffering of life. You need a meaning. It's not optional. And the deeper the meaning, the better. And it's definitely the case that people find that meaning primarily in the adoption of responsibility. And that case isn't being made well in our culture, especially not to young people. There's a hunger, a mass hunger for that idea. bigger than happiness, that meaning. It's deeper than happiness. Happiness is fleeting. There's tremendous adventure in doing something like telling the truth. There's tremendous adventure in doing something like telling the truth. There's tremendous adventure in doing something like telling the truth. There's tremendous adventure in doing something like telling the truth. Of heavy responsibility that's sustaining through good times and bad. It's always the case that the best story wins.
Start where you stand, never mind the past. The past won't help you in beginning and new. And if you left it all behind at last, why that's enough, you're done with it. You stand where you stand, never mind the past. The past won't help you in beginning and new. And if you left it all behind at last, why that's enough, you're done with it, you're through. This is another chapter in the book. This is another race that you have planned. Don't give the vanished days a backward look. Start where you stand, start where you stand. The world won't care about your old defeats if you can start anew and win success. The future is your time and time is fleet. Bear as much of work and strain and stress. Forget the buried words and dead despairs. Here is a brand new trial right at hand. The future is for him who doesn't dare. Start where you stand, start where you stand. Start where you stand, never mind the past. The past won't help you in beginning and new. And if you left it all behind at last, why that's enough, you're done with it. You stand where you stand, never mind the past. The past won't help you in beginning and new. And if you left it all behind at last, why that's enough, you're done with it. You do. Old failures will not hold, old triumphs aid. Today's the thing, tomorrow soon will be. Get in the fight and face it unafraid, and leave the past to ancient history. What's been has been, yesterday's dead, and by it you would neither bless nor banned. Take courage, man, be brave and try the hell where you stand. Start where you stand. Start where you stand, never mind the past. The past won't help you in beginning and new. And if you left it all behind at last, why that's enough, you're done with it. You stand where you stand, never mind the past. The past won't help you in beginning and new. And if you left control, and others not. Some things are in our control, and others not. Some things are in our control, and others not. Hey, things in our control: opinion, aim, desire, aversion, and in a word, whatever our own actions. Hey, 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 things are not in our control: body, property, reputation, command, and in a word, whatever our not our own actions. Hey, hey, actions. The things in our control are by nature free, unrestricted and unhindered. But those not in our control are weak, dependent, restricted, alien, alien. Remember then, if you suppose the things which are dependent are also free, and take for thee what belongs to others, then you will be hindered, you'll lament, you'll be disturbed. You'll find fault with gods and men, you'll find fault with gods and men. Some things are in our control, and others not. Some things are in our control, and others not. Some things are in our control, and others not. Some things are in our control, and others not. But if you take for your own only that which is your own, of you what belongs to others, such as it really is, no one will ever compel you, no one will ever restrict you. You'll find fault with no one, you will accuse no one, you will do nothing against your will. No one will hurt you, you'll have no enemy, and you will not be harmed. Aiming therefore at such great things, remember you must not allow no tendency in yourself to be trained to attain those lesser things. Instead you must entirely quit some, and for now postpone the rest. But if you would both have these great things along with power and riches, you'll not even gain the latter, cause you aiming at the former, and you'll fail at the former, by which alone happiness and freedom are achieved. Some things are in our control, and others not. Some things are in our control, and others not. Some things are in our control, and others not. Some things are in our control, and others not. Some things are in our control, and others not. Some things are in our control, and others not. Some things are in our control, and others not. Some things are in our control, and others not. Work then, so to say, to every harsh appearance, you are but an appearance, and by no means the real thing. And then examine it by those rules which you have, and first and chiefly this, and first and chiefly this, whether it concerns things in our control, or those which are not, or those which are not. And if it concerns anything not in our control, be prepared to say that it is nothing to you.
This is a dream my 5-year-old nephew had. Now, you got to get the context of this dream, right? Year after this dream, parents were divorced, so there were dragons in the house. He was about 4 at this time. He was running around the house with this little plastic knight helmet on and a sword. He was zipping around killing things with it. Doing this all the time. And even when he went to sleep at night, he'd put the sword by his pillow, night helmet on his pillow. Now, every night, or every second night, or every third night for 6 months, he'd been waking up screaming. So I was there one night when he woke up screaming. Next morning I said, well, did you dream anything? And so he launched into this story. He said he was in this field and these little creatures, like dwarf, were coming up to him and they didn't have any arms, they just had legs. They had big beaks and they were covered with hair and grease, and on top of their head was a cross. And there's lots and lots of these dwarves and they were jumping on him with their beaks, biting him. We all looked at him and thought, well, it's no wonder you're waking up screaming, right? I mean, you know, that doesn't sound so good. And then he said, well, wait, there's more, right? Back in the distance, there's a dragon. You might as well go after the dragon. Go after the dragon. You might as well go after the dragon. Go after the dragon. And the dragon is puffing out fire and smoke. Fire and smoke. Fire, fire and smoke. And every time it puffs out fire and smoke, it turns into these dwarfs. Big problem, right? Just like the problem of the Hydra in Greek mythology. Cut off one head, 7 more appear. What are you going to do about these dwarfs? Kill 1, big deal. 10 more are coming. What can you do about that? In a legal trial, that would have been an inadmissible question. That's called leading the witness. Because what I told him was, despite the horror of this situation, you maybe could do something about it. And he said, I'd take my sword, I'd get my dad. That's a good idea, right? There's the real dad, and then there's the tradition dad, right? You might as well have your father by your side if you're going to go into battle. I'd take my sword, I'd get my dad, I'd go to where the dragon was. I'd jump up on his head, I'd poke both of his eyes out with the sword, I'd go down his throat to the place where the fire comes out, I'd cut a piece of that box out, and I'd use it as a shield. Wow! Oh, that's unbelievable! Unbelievable that he could do that. Perfect, right? There's no sense going after the dwarves, because there's thousands of them. You might as well go after the dragon. Go after the dragon. You might as well go after the dragon. Go after the dragon. What happens if you go after the dragon? You get a piece of it. Piece of its center nature. A piece that can defend you against anything, including other dragons. What if this was the case, evolutionarily speaking or religiously speaking? What if we were adapted to the world? Now, what if it's not the simple place of dead objects that we think it is? What if it's something a lot more alive, a lot more like a story? What if the story is something like this? You have absolutely everything you need, but you have to use all of it. If you run away from any of it, you don't get that piece of the dragon. If you miss even one piece, there's a chink in your armor. There's a place where you're vulnerable. If you make even one mistake, you lessen yourself. If you lessen yourself, you're going to run away more. Not only that, when someone wants to lean on you, they're not going to be able to lean on you because you'll just fall over. What if it was the case that we were adapted to the world, really adapted to it, so that if we made full use of all the talents we had, we'd be okay? What if it was the case that if we set out consciously to never run away from something we know we shouldn't run away from, that everything would be all right? Well, you can think whatever you want to think, but this is what I think. I think it's bloody amazing that that little kid's book had all that information in it. And so you might ask yourself, if that information isn't true, how the hell did it get there? That's it. You might as well go after the dragon. Go after the dragon.
fact that I know that the information that I'm purveying by all these means is helping people sort out their lives. Thousands and thousands of people. It's overwhelming. And it's great. And that's well worth it. I'm afraid that we're on the precipice of doing something quite stupid. And I was hoping that if enough people pull themselves together and return with some understanding to the core values that made our culture great and make all cultures great, the real values that human beings have to guide themselves by, that will avoid unnecessary catastrophe and that will put the world in a better place. I think we can do that. What's more worthwhile than that? What's more worthwhile than that? What's more worthwhile than that? You know, and I know it's working because I get thousands of letters, people saying, mostly they say two things. One is that I've given them words to articulate things they knew but didn't know how to say. The other 3/4 are from people who say, oh, I was in a dark place. Then they outline the particular kind of darkness that enveloped them and said, well, I'm trying to not lie. I'm trying to adopt responsibility. I'm trying to formulate my aims. I'm trying to rectify my relationships. I'm trying to improve myself. And things are way better. And I'm back from the brink. And I'm better for my family. And I've got hope for the future. There's nothing better than that. What's more worthwhile than that? What's more worthwhile than that? What's more worthwhile than that? You know, and I know it's working because, you know, when I go down the street now, people stop me all the time. Can you imagine a better situation than being able to walk down the street? It's pretty much anywhere now that I go. And there's a good possibility that someone will stop me and say, look, I was having a really rough time and I've been watching what you've been doing and listening to it. And things are way better for me. Like one of the things that happened to me a while ago, which I just loved, was I was in LA, downtown, and downtown LA is kind of rough. And anyways, I was walking around with my wife. This kid pulled up in a car beside me and hopped out. He was a Latino kid, about probably 19, 20, something like that. Kind of a stylish looking kid. Jumped over and he said, are you Dr. Peterson? I said, yes. He said, oh, and he was all happy to meet me and shook my hand and he was all excited. He said, look, I've been listening to your lectures for 18 months. I've really been listening to them and my life is way better. And he said, I've really fixed my relationship up with my father. Then he said, wait a minute. So I stopped and waited for a second. He ran back to the car. He got his father out of the car. They both came over and they had their arms around each other and, you know, they were looking all smiley and happy. And his father said, look, I'm getting along really well with your son. And so it's because he's been listening to your lectures. Thanks a lot. Like they were really happy. And Jesus, you know, how could you ask for anything better than that? It's so good. What's more worthwhile than that? What's more worthwhile than that? What's more worthwhile than that? You know, and I know it's working because I know it's working. It's more worthwhile than that. What's more worthwhile than that? What's more worthwhile than
Every generation that came before, the boys would have to go and fight in a war. Their mothers wondering what they were fighting for, and praying they'd make it. My grandma was born in 1924, eldest of 13, near I lasted them all. I think of all throughout her life that she saw, and I say we make it. We're all gonna make it. No, don't you mistake it. My soul, you can't take it. This road, you can't fake it. We're all gonna make it. My old man came up in the 70s. He used to walk around with his Bowie LPs. His love of music he then passed on to me, and now I'll make it. Every generation fancies that it's gonna be the one to face the apocalypse. We've been through so much and yet still we persist. I know we gon' make it. We're all gonna make it. And don't you mistake it. My soul, you can't take it. This road, you can't fake it. We're all gonna make it. I'm one of the gang that came up in a time when we hung out outside, 'cause there was no online. What they unleashed on this world, we had no chance to decline. I know what we lost and we gained at the same time. I'm so grateful to be the head of a line that winds back through the ages to the dawn of time. Every woman and man that fought, lived, loved and died is here with me. They're all on our side, and we're all gonna make it. Now don't you mistake it. My soul, you can't take it. This road, you can't fake it. We're all gonna make it. We're all gonna make it. Now don't you mistake it. My soul, you can't take it. This road, you can't fake it. We're all gonna make it.
I knew this guy, he'd been in a motorcycle accident and it really ruined him. And he was like a linesman, you know, working on the power. And he was working with someone who had Parkinson's disease, and they had complementary inadequacies. And so two of them could do the job of one person. So they're out there fixing power lines in the freezing cold, despite the fact that one was 3/4 wrecked with a motorcycle accident. The other one had Parkinson's. It's like, that's how our civilization works. It's
all these ruined people out there. They've got problems like you can't believe. Off they go to work. Can do things they don't even like. And look, the lights are on. My God, it's unbelievable. It's a miracle. Look, the lights are on. It's a miracle. It's unbelievable. It's a miracle. Look, the lights are on. It's a miracle. It's unbelievable. And we're so ungrateful. College students, postmodern, they're so ungrateful, you know? They don't know that they're surrounded by just a bloody miracle. A miracle that all this stuff works, that all you crazy chimpanzees that don't know each other can sit in the same room for 2 hours sweltering away without tearing each other apart, because that's what chimps do. Without tearing each other apart, because that's what chimps do. It's a miracle. Look, the lights are on. It's a miracle. It's unbelievable. It's a miracle. Look, the lights are on. It's a miracle. It's unbelievable. It's a miracle. Look, the lights are on. It's a miracle. It's unbelievable. It's a miracle. Look, the lights are on. It's a miracle. It's unbelievable. So, anyways, so, what happened? Well, I made some videos and I got to the bottom of some things, at least as far as I could tell. So I told you what the bottom is. Then I got this idea about what you might do about it, which isn't my idea. It's not my idea. It's an old idea. It's far older than Christianity. It's the oldest story of mankind. It's old. Get yourself together. Transcend your suffering. See if you can be some kind of hero. Get yourself together. Transcend your suffering. See if you can be some kind of hero. Get yourself together. Transcend your suffering. See if you can be some kind of hero. Make the suffering in the world less. Well, that's the way forward, as far as I can tell. If there is any way forward. And that's what it looks like to me. So, that's it.